It kind of reminded me of Coco Chanel or Charlie Chaplin, but like not evil. Hi there, my name is Tessa, and as much as I hate to admit it, I get irrationally angry whenever I see a celebrity in a bad outfit. Because how in God's name can you have all of that time and money and resources and still not manage to turn a good look? Even though making public appearances are a big part of their job description, I'd say that the vast majority of celebrities have an average sense of style, which is why I'm so appreciative of the ones who actually try to tell a story with their clothing. Today I'm going to be talking about some of the celebrities who I personally consider the best dressed. I'll be taking a look at how their outfits have evolved over the years, the people involved with developing their signature style, and key aspects of their visual brand identity. Now obviously, this is my opinion, so you are going to see a recurring theme when it comes to the sorts of style that I gravitate towards. We're going to start off with Zendaya. If there's one celebrity who the vast majority consider stylish, it's probably Zendaya. I was first introduced to her in 2010 on Shake It Up, where she was one of many victims of Disney Channel sitcom styling, complete with knee-high Converse, clashing colors, and a truly absurd amount of layers. I was just beginning to age out of the Disney Channel demographic, so I wasn't obsessed with the show or its actresses, but I do remember thinking, what the hell are they wearing whenever I would see photos of them? Out in public, Zendaya was a little more toned down, but her looks still had a juvenile quality to them, unsurprisingly so, considering her age. The next year, when she turned 14, she started working with stylist Florence Welch, who created a distinct separation between her and her on-screen character. For red carpets, they would opt for A-line silhouettes and sky-high heels, coming across as less childish, but definitely still age-appropriate. In 2015, she started working on her next project, Casey Undercover, with the character having a more minimal look as far as the Disney Channel was concerned. With Casey being more of a tomboy, Zendaya's red carpet moments started highlighting her femininity and her figure. And while she didn't dress outright sexy, there were definitely signals that she was starting to grow up. With hip-hop being such a big part of her early career, as evidenced by her debut album, in the day-to-day she leaned towards an androgynous style with sweatpants, sneakers, and oversized t-shirts. It was the swag era after all, and it's kind of funny how glamorous she looked on red carpets versus when she was just running around and doing everyday things. Florence Welch has said that in the early days of Zendaya's career, they used her style strategically to help with her name recognition, and by 2015 it had certainly panned out, as she was invited to Fashion Week, the Met Gala, the Oscars, and to host the AMAs. A reminder, her only credits at the time were on the Disney Channel, and none of her peers were getting the same kind of invitations. 2017 marked her first major movie roles with Spider-Man: Homecoming and The Greatest Showman. The Greatest Showman was particularly notable as it was one of the first times that she decided to employ method dressing, meaning outfits that were inspired by the movie. Considering it was a relatively minor role, it would have been very easy for her to get passed over for her more famous co-stars during the press tour. But by turning out look after look, it was a really great way of forcing her way into the conversation. 2019 was her next big year, starring in Spider-Man: Far From Home, where she again took to method dressing, and Euphoria, which properly showed off her acting chops. The 2020s have seen her climb to A-list status, and for each of her new releases, she and Law have continued to method dress. For the Dune series, she went in a futuristic direction, for Challenger, she opted for sporty meets preppy, and for Spider-Man: No Way Home, she paid homage to the franchise's heroes and villains. Her everyday attire nowadays tends to be more neutral in color and silhouette, often mixing more masculine pieces like blazers and trousers with feminine accessories. Unlike a lot of celebrities, she actually buys her clothing and doesn't just borrow them, so she has a really impressive collection. I've loved a lot of her outfits over the years, but if I had to pick a few, I'd probably go with her 2016 Kids' Choice Awards look, this random-ass outfit from 2017, her 2018 Met Gala look, her 2024 Schiaparelli Fashion Week appearance, and basically any of her movie premiere outfits. Considering how private she is, I'm not sure if we're gonna see her dress when she eventually marries Tom Holland, but I just know that Law is going to bring his A-game. Next is Elle Fanning. Although Elle had started acting as a kid, she was initially just known as Dakota's little sister, and the two actually wound up wearing a lot of similar outfits out in public. I think it's cute, but those of you with siblings, let me know if you would have loved or hated that. After starring in Sofia Coppola's movie Somewhere in 2010, which was followed by Twixt, Super 8, and We Bought a Zoo the following year, Elle started to get recognized for her own talents and was quickly proclaimed one of Hollywood's most promising young actors. Even though she was barely a tween, she had a fairly good grasp of her personal style, even saying in 2011 that she'd rather look like a 2-year-old than a 21-year-old. And you can definitely see this childish quality in her clothing at the time, as she often gravitated towards braids, baby doll dresses, Peter Pan collars, lace, Mary Janes, pastels, and bows. These clothing choices made her look outright angelic, and that girlish innocence no doubt helped her land the coveted role of Sleeping Beauty in Disney's live-action Maleficent movie. She also used method dressing while promoting the film, being one of the earliest adopters of the trend, and often wore princessy ball gowns, shades of pink and blue, a good deal of florals, and even some of Disney's characters' faces. Honestly, just by looking at her, you could tell that they cast the right person. Now fully a teenager, Elle's personal style got a little bit more sporty, with sneakers and tennis skirts. You know, she was more on the go. But she still retained her love of all things girly, with pastels and flowy mini dresses. At one point in 2014, she also dyed her hair brown, and I'm actually relieved by how short-lived the change was because it made her look like a totally different person. She's been booked and busy from that point onwards, and while certain elements evolved with the times, for the most part she followed her usual style codes. The biggest differences were the incorporation of brighter colors, ruffly details, strapless dresses, bolder makeup, and higher heels, all of which pointed towards a more grown-up Elle compared to what she'd been wearing back in 2010. On occasion, she experimented with edgier looks with funky patterns, tighter silhouettes, and darker colors, and I really love seeing where the two styles overlap. Whether it's because she knows what she wants, or because she's been working with the same stylist, Samantha McMillan, for the last decade, Elle's fashion sense is clearly defined and has a sort of elven fairy vibe that's kind of become her calling card. When they stick to what works, it's breathtaking, but even on the occasions where they deviate from the formula, it still looks on brand. The reason for this effortless cohesion is probably because, from the very beginning, her style had been rooted in very specific time periods, namely the 1950s and 1960s, which makes her look like an old Hollywood star. There's also just a hint of Victorian influence with the corsets, and I appreciate that she shares my love for big poofy dresses. Elle kills it every single time that she goes to Cannes, to the extent that I actively wait for her to show up. And even though I'm in the minority, I loved her 2019 Met Gala look, which was just so perfectly camp. Next is Chloe Sevigny. As a teenager, Chloe would skip school and take the train from Connecticut into Manhattan, where she cultivated an eclectic style that mixed thrifted finds with designer pieces and department store basics. Her unusual outfits quickly got her noticed, and at 17 she was scouted as a model, before working as an intern at Sassy magazine. When she was 19, she relocated to Brooklyn, where she continued modeling and also found work as a seamstress. And while walking around, she was spotted by renowned writer Jay McInerney, who dubbed her the coolest girl in the world in The New Yorker because of her unapologetic attitude and penchant for spotting a trend before it even became one. She became a muse to several New York-based artists, including Harmony Korine, who cast her in his controversial film, Kids. This opened the door to acting, and she quickly became an indie darling. And unlike a lot of actresses at the time, she gravitated towards archive pieces, no-name designers, and a variety of brands. She didn't like doing the obvious, and would always add a weird shoe or necklace or makeup to add just a little bit of edge, staying true to her fashion girly roots. In 2006, she started starring in the HBO series Big Love, and I feel like her clothing got a lot more quintessentially movie star, maybe because she was spending a lot more time in LA, or because her character was always dressed kind of frumpy. In the 2010s, she moved back to New York and embraced the twee, soft grunge look that all of us fell victim to, with knee socks, Oxfords, and leather. But she somehow managed to do the impossible and make it look mature and sophisticated and expensive. And honestly, I think a lot of these outfits hold up just as well today. In the last few years, she's leaned into a more hyper-feminine style with collars, puffed sleeves, and baby doll dresses, but she still adds her signature twist to it. And basically anything she wears, 6 months later, it's all over Pinterest. And I have to say that I love that we've seen her re-wear the same pieces for years and years, which is really how it should be. And every single day, I wish that I had been able to go to her closet sale. I don't expect everyone to love her fashion sense, but I don't think that she does either. And that unabashedness is probably the key to her success. Next is Diane Keaton. Similar to Chloe Sevigny, Diane Keaton has been styling herself her entire career, although maybe it's a little bit more impressive since she's been doing it twice as long. Since her Annie Hall days back in the 1970s, Diane has had a penchant for men's clothing, and she said that growing up, her mother would take her and her sister to thrift stores, and the habit stuck with her whole life. She wore a lot of suits, vests, ties, and hats, and compared to later on in her life, she played around a lot more with color and patterns. In the 2000s, I feel like her style got a little less androgynous. There were still her usual style motifs like button-down shirts, blazers, and neutral colors, but she began incorporating more skirts, wider belts, higher heels, and bolder jewelry. It kind of reminded me of Coco Chanel or Charlie Chaplin, but like not evil. I'm sure some people will say, oh no, that clothing totally aged her. But I've actually always appreciated it when people look older when they're younger, because in a way, it almost has like the reverse effect later in life. Think about Meryl Streep, Judi Dench, or Steve Martin. They've kind of always looked like they were in their 40s or 50s. And since they don't really look that different from decades ago, it's almost like they haven't aged. So I always forget that they're starting to approach 80. Does that make sense? And this is gonna sound a little weird, but there really is something that I find so sexy about the way that Diane Keaton dresses. Like, you know Keanu Reeves in Something's Gotta Give? That's me. In more recent years, her clothing has gone in a punkier direction, and it's fun to see the more modern additions to her wardrobe like grommet belts, chunky platforms, ball gown skirts, leather jackets, choker necklaces, and combat boots. Similar to Chloe, she's been wearing the same stuff for years, but always in a fun, new way. And I wonder if they're just more incentivized to use what they have, since they don't have a stylist making calls and going shopping for them. I always found it funny that Diane's style philosophy was so distinct that it even rubbed off on the characters that she played, because regardless of the time period or the character's personality, they were basically Diane Keaton but in a different font. More recently, she and longtime collaborator Nancy Meyers have served as a source of inspiration for the coastal grandmother aesthetic. And if that isn't a testament to the timelessness of her style, I don't know what is. Next is Janelle Monae. Janelle's first stylist, Maeve Riley, was actually hired by her record label in 2010, and she was tasked with creating a recognizable look that would help her stand out in a crowd. Janelle preferred more androgynous clothing, which tied into her sexual and gender identity, and they frequently incorporated menswear elements that some publications referred to as formal tomboy. There were a lot of neckties, hats, suits, and suspenders, but with some feminine touches like stilettos, pearls, and sequins. Maeve has said that the choice to wear primarily white and black is something that Janelle actually decided herself, as it was a way of paying homage to her family members who often wore uniforms to work. In the mid-2010s, Janelle picked up a new wardrobe staple, capes, which added some drama to her more workwear-ish attire, and she played around with more structured options and others that were more flowy. She also began incorporating a lot more red, playing around with dresses, and experimenting more with her hair. It was still cohesive, but not quite as repetitive as it had been in the years prior. In 2018, Janelle started working with Alexandra Mandelkorn, who is still her stylist now. And in those early days, it seemed as though they were struggling to find their footing, with some outfits being hits and others misses. This was mostly because they were actually trying something new, not just sticking her in the 1000th variation of a suit. Not that I would have complained about that. They played around with color, deviating from her signature black and white, and she was a lot more willing to embrace sexiness and humor. There were still the occasional suits, but they took unconventional approaches to it, like plunging necklines, oversized blazers, and knee-length shorts. Her dresses either went the sexy or cute route, or sometimes a bit of both, which I also think was a good reflection of Janelle's personality. I'll always have a soft spot for her suits, mainly because I think it's brilliant how many different iterations of the same basic premise they've had, but I'd be lying if I said that I didn't love it whenever she decides to just be hot. Because she's been so consistent for so long, it's tough to tell the difference between her outfits from 2012, 2018, and 2025. But I actually have a lot of respect for that consistency. It proves that she knows who she is, and either you like it or you don't. Next is Helena Bonham Carter, another celebrity who styles herself. Much like her personality, Helena's outfits have been described as odd for years and years, but that's what I love about it. When she got her start in the late 1980s, she went in the sort of boyish little lad direction with bowler hats, polos, sweaters, and sneakers. It was a cozy sort of look that created a unique distinction from her more elegant movie roles. In the 1990s, she stopped dressing like a chimney sweep and more like the protagonist of a Bronte novel. She gravitated towards moodier colors, often wore her hair in a messy updo, and had a penchant for corsets. This sort of Victorian influence continued into the 2000s, but it got a lot more whimsical, with Helena adding bows, chokers, shawls, and gloves, not to mention a good deal more sex appeal. This gothic pinup style has been her go-to for years now, and I love how it's simultaneously so rigid and structured, but also kind of laid back and messy. That juxtaposition is basically the definition of punk, and it's no wonder she was a favorite of Vivienne Westwood's for so many years, and I would kill to see her collection, which I just know has to be extensive considering how many pieces she's worn while casually running errands. As for Helena's personal style, there's no real rhyme or reason to it, and it kind of makes me think of Fancy Nancy, but all grown up. She'd wear 3 sweaters at a time, a skirt over jeans, a ball gown with sneakers, or a coat and a scarf in the middle of summer. It was totally random, but weirdly, it worked. Maybe because it was so clear that it wasn't an act, it was just her. Sure, she might look like a manic pixie dream girl in some random indie movie, but she's my manic pixie dream girl. I also think it's interesting that she had so much fashion overlap with the characters that she played on screen, almost like she brought a piece of them home with her. And I can totally see a bit of Marla and Bellatrix in Mrs. Lovett. Also, did you know that in 2006, she actually launched her own clothing line, Pantaloonies, which took modern clothing pieces and gave them a 19th century twist? Next is Bella Hadid. Although Bella has worked with a handful of stylists, including Molly Dixon, Mimi Cottrell, and Elizabeth Sulzer, she's been mainly styling herself for the last few years. When she first popped onto the modeling scene, she had a lot to prove, as most people associated her with the Kardashians or the Real Housewives and didn't really take her seriously. Her style was pretty generic with skinny jeans, a tiny top, a designer bag, and maybe a jacket. They were the type of looks that you could spot a dozen different girls wearing, and in a similar way, Bella was just one of a dozen rich girls trying to become a celebrity. Some point after turning 20, her style got an upgrade, getting a little funkier, edgier, and sexier. She was still light on the accessorizing, but she played around more with texture and silhouette, and altogether looked a lot more polished and fashion-forward. This translated into her career, where she was starting to get booked by more prestigious fashion houses and was beginning to make a name for herself outside of the reality TV space. After finally ending her on and off again relationship with The Weeknd in 2019, Bella's style reached its final form. Taking notes from the 1970s, 1990s, and 2000s, her outfits mixed vintage designer pieces with cool indie brands, creating a look that was uniquely her and totally cutting edge. Some days she dressed more sporty, other days more edgy, and other times more geeky. You honestly never knew what she'd wear next. She definitely has some looks that I'm personally not a big fan of, but I'm never gonna knock someone for trying. And when it comes to a lot of trends like phone charms, platform Uggs, and Adidas Sambas, she was there first. She recently got back into horseback riding and is dating a professional equestrian, which has definitely impacted her style, which has gone in a high fashion, Wild West direction with boots, denim, cowboy hats, and turquoise jewelry. And I really feel like these outfits have a sort of early 2000s rom-com vibe to them. Now, because her outfits can read as very micro-trendy, they don't have the same level of longevity as some other people on this list. But I can appreciate them for the time capsule that they are. And I'm sure that in 10 years or so, they'll be back on everyone's mood boards all over again. Next is Dua Lipa. I was living in Australia when Dua Lipa first started popping off, and I remember being so drawn to her because she just had such a different look from the other pop girlies at the time. Because her career was just getting off the ground and she didn't really have the name recognition to work with big designers, her outfits weren't revolutionary, but they did feel like things my friends and I would actually wear, probably because we're right around the same age. She started working with Lorenzo Pasocco early on, and it does feel like they played it kind of safe in the beginning. They got more experimental in 2018, but I'll be honest, I didn't really love it. Her casual looks felt messy and disjointed, and the mix of sportswear and formal wear just came across as cheap. And for red carpet events, it kind of felt like they just said yes to any brand that came to them without considering if it actually worked for her vibe and body type. I did love the bob though. Something was in the air in 2020, and it seemed like they finally hit their stride, finding a good balance of comfort and quirkiness. And I actually think that she was one of the first celebrities to get money pieces and really jump-started that trend. She was dating Anwar Hadid at the time, and I do wonder if some of Bella's style philosophy kind of rubbed off on her, because when they were spotted together, their outfits were very complementary. Dua's style just got funkier from there with fun hats, unusual outerwear, large cutouts, and bold colors. For the last few years, she's been living life right, basically only working as necessary to pay the bills, but otherwise she's traveling, eating, reading, and falling in love. And while she's managed to keep the paparazzi at bay, whenever she shares photos of these adventures, I can't help but feel so jealous, because that should be me. This ushered in a sort of sensual, minimalistic era, focusing on great tailoring with unique closet staples. And it's definitely her aesthetic that I gravitate towards most myself. She's so beautiful that I genuinely think that she could pull off anything, but I always love seeing her in Schiaparelli, Jacquemus, and Vivienne Westwood because they add just the right amount of surprise. Next is Doja Cat. Doja has been working with Brett Allen Nelson since 2019 when he helped style the music video for Juicy, which was an early example of the trendy, sexy, funny vibe that Doja has become known for. Early in her career, designers weren't really fighting to dress her, so a lot of her red carpet, music video, and performance looks were custom made by Brett. It's one thing to pull an outfit together from stuff that you already have in your closet, it's a whole other thing to make it from scratch, so kudos to them. That changed pretty quickly after her smash hit Say So, and by 2021, she was wearing Versace, Schiaparelli, Vivienne Westwood, and Bonham. But she and Brett still made a point of styling them in unexpected ways, which earned her love from the fashion industry. And she quickly became a staple of Paris Fashion Week, with her unusual outfits becoming the talk of the town. From the start of her career, Doja played around with her hair and makeup, often doing them herself. And while she now has an entire team of people helping her, you can still see her creativity influence the end result. Sometimes she'll look like a cat, other times a grungy supermodel, and sometimes she'll just cover herself in paint from head to toe. It's a level of commitment I've got to respect, especially considering how long these looks probably take to finish. And I just feel like there aren't any other celebrities who are consistently that experimental. While I prefer her angstier looks, which just feel like a better fit for her personality, I can respect when they keep things simple because she is a very pretty girl. Next is FKA Twigs. Starting off her career in London's underground scene, Twigs quickly became known for her experimental sound and avant-garde style choices, which tended to blend softness with hardness. She mixed chokers, harnesses, beaded accessories, and chunky boots with lingerie, kimonos, and dresses, which created a look I'd describe as Afro steampunk apocalyptic. It honestly looks like she's come from a dystopian future or something. And I always felt like the edginess of her style choices was such a fun juxtaposition to her very sweet facial features. While her red carpet looks definitely stood out against the other pop girlies, it was her street style that really sold me. She'd layer so many things that would look like she just raided an antique shop, looking totally intentional instead of messy. She had a really cool collection of necklaces, jackets, and hats, and while all of her outfits were uniquely her, there was also a lot of variation. One day she'd look like a modern-day Marie Antoinette, the next like a hipster from Bushwick, the next a legendary assassin, and the next a mermaid walking among us. I also love that she has fun with every aspect of her outfit, including her hair and makeup, which really proves how important the smallest details can be. And I've got to say, I have no idea how she manages to pull off a half-shaved head, because if I did that, I'd just look like the hairdresser got distracted or something. Twigs has worked with several stylists over the years, including Georgia Pendlebury and Matthew Josephs, and I feel like they've all done a great job of capturing her sort of punk goddess aesthetic. She's said that when she gets dressed, she isn't concerned about looking attractive, and it's more of an expression of her creativity. And considering how much time I could spend just staring at all the different colors and textures and layers in her outfits, I definitely consider them a work of art. And much like art, some people will love it and others will hate it. Next is Florence Welch. She's been styled by Aldine Johnson since the start of her career in 2009, and they've stuck to the same look for most of it, which makes sense considering her music hasn't deviated much either. I'd describe her style as witchy glam rock, like if Stevie Nicks and David Bowie had a baby. For performances and red carpets, she goes in a sort of modern medieval direction, as seen with the fun embroidery, capes, long sleeves, and high necklines. She has a very specific color story, either gravitating towards sweet pastels, woodsy colors, or deep jewel tones, all of which play nicely with her bright red hair. And as a result, all of her looks are incredibly cohesive. In the day-to-day, she reads as a bit more 1970s hippie, with flared pants, vests, platform boots, flowy dresses, fur coats, floppy hats, and ruffled collars. And if you just slapped a grainy filter on these photos, she might be able to trick you into thinking that she was hanging out with Led Zeppelin. Her outfits are consistent to the point that some might call it boring, but I think it's kind of fun that you can't tell if a photo of hers from 2015 or 2025. While it's true that you can probably predict what she's going to wear next, I still love her look. And it's absolutely a style I would wear myself, especially in the fall, since all of the velvet and paisley just feels perfect for that season. And again, she just has an amazing collection of coats and handbags. Next is Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. Yes, I am lumping them together, even though they hate that, but considering Mary-Kate has literally said that if she sleeps over at Ashley's house, she can still get dressed in the morning, I think it's fair to say that they have a very similar style philosophy. They don't usually wear the exact same thing, either switching up the color or silhouette, but there's still a good deal of overlap that ties them together visually. And there's even a thing on TikTok nowadays called Mary-Kate and Ashley matching, where you and a friend dress kinda similar, but you're not carbon copies of one another. When the two were young, they were styled by Judy Swartz, who says she introduced them to vintage clothing, layers, and sunglasses, all of which have become staples of their adult wardrobes. Although their sunny blonde hair was their signature for most of their life, in their 20s they started experimenting with other colors, not only to express themselves creatively, but also make it easier to differentiate them. My favorite was Mary-Kate's coppery red era. It was just so fun and flirty, which is also how I would describe her personality. In the mid-2000s and early 2010s, they became known for their bohemian style, which featured a lot of statement jewelry, vintage dresses, and giant purses. They later pivoted to more of a businesswoman chic look, which tied into their brand, The Row, and it was uncommon to see them in anything other than black, white, or brown. There's still something a bit unusual about these looks, but it's less overt than it was in the past. But honestly, I don't think I've disliked any of their outfits for like the last 25 years. Next is Colman Domingo. Yes, I am including a man on this list. I am just as surprised as you are. Although Colman has said that he was pretty proud of his personal style, he knew he wanted to take it up a notch and hired stylist duo Wayman Bannerman and Micah McDonald in 2017, right around the time that he started getting more mainstream media attention. Male celebrities have a tendency to play it safe when they're on the red carpet, to a disappointing degree in fact, and while Colman does have the occasional moment where he wears a simple suit, more often than not, he has fun with it. He'll wear a flared pant one day and a slim fit the next. Sometimes he'll wear a cravat, other times a bow tie. Sometimes he'll lean formal, other times casual. And of course, he never shies away from color and patterns. I also appreciate that he understands the importance of an accessory. It's kind of like marshmallows on hot chocolate. Necessary? No, but a welcome addition? Absolutely. I just wish that they would let him out in jeans more, because we already know that he can make a suit look good. I'd love to see him kill it when he's just grabbing coffee or something. Next is Tessa Thompson. I think I'm just a sucker for Wayman and Micah's styling, or maybe it's name solidarity. They've been working with Tessa at least since 2016, and I definitely feel like you can see the shift in her outfits from before then. Don't get me wrong, she looked good early in her career, but it kind of felt like she didn't want to draw too much attention to herself. And most of her outfits just look like anything any random celebrity would be wearing. They do a great job of playing with color and silhouette, and regardless of how poofy Tessa's skirts and pants and jackets get, they never look like they're wearing her, which is honestly really tough to do when you're as short as she is. And I'd consider that sort of sculptural quality a key element of her style. And you'll notice that even when she's in a more casual outfit, her accessories like hats or sunglasses will have a similar sharpness and edge. I'm a sucker for any of her hyper feminine looks because I just love a dress, but I also really love when they lean into the theatricality and go all out with the hair and makeup and accessories. Last is Rihanna. Over the course of her career, Rihanna has worked with several stylists, including Lori Goldstein, Mel Ottenberg, and Jaleel Weaver, but she also frequently dresses herself. Like many musicians, she tends to take inspiration from whatever project she's working on at the moment. When she got her start, she went in an urban, tropical direction with sneakers, jeans, and bikinis that made her more approachable. When she transitioned into adulthood, things got a bit sexier and edgier, sporting a sharp bob, tight dresses, leather bodysuits, and a good deal of black. Then she had more of an angry, avant-garde era, with cutouts, huge shoulder pads, and unique textiles. Then she dyed her hair red and fooled around with a retro rockabilly look, before heading in a pop-punk meets hip-hop direction. By 2013, she had made a name for herself in the fashion world, and as the years passed, she started dipping her toes into the production side of things, launching a self-proclaimed ghetto fabulous label, River Island, collaborating with Puma on the Fenty Creeper, and starting her own lingerie line, Savage. Having been on a music hiatus since 2016, her style has become a lot less rigid, as it doesn't have to be defined by a specific project, but her looks are still identifiable as her by their penchant for the unexpected. In 2022, Rihanna announced her first pregnancy and changed maternity fashion forever by boldly showing off her bump. Some days she went in a more casual direction, other days more sexy, but no matter what, she was having fun. Some of my favorite looks of hers include her 2015 Met Gala dress, obviously, those few short months when she had a mullet, and basically everything she wore in the Shut Up and Drive music video. I'm still hunting down that star dress. Now, before I end this video, I do want to give a few honorable mentions to some celebrities whose recent looks I've been impressed with, but I'm not quite ready to crown them fashion icons yet. We'll start off with Doechii. Styled by Sam Wolf, Doechii's only recently burst onto the fashion scene, but I feel like they do a really great job of mixing black street style with a sort of geeky, preppy look. And whenever she does have a sexy glam moment, I fall to my knees. And I also can't believe that she's only 5'2". They do a great job of making her look a hell of a lot taller. Next is Sabrina Carpenter. Similar to Doechii, Sabrina's stylist, Jared Elner, just really knows how to work with her proportions, and she doesn't look nearly as tiny as she actually is. Her looks are kind of predictable, but for the most part, they work. And I do love the pop culture references that they like to throw in here and there. Her Short and Sweet tour will probably go down as one of the most recognizable celebrity looks of all time, which is why it's so easy for people to dress up in Sabrina Carpenter cosplay. Next is Olivia Rodrigo. I believe that her current stylists are Chloe and Chanel Delgadillo. Now, admittedly, I prefer her street style to her red carpet looks, since those can sometimes come off as a bit too simplistic, but I feel like she's the perfect example of what the average, slightly angsty 20-something would aspire to dress like nowadays. She's definitely following trends, not setting them, but at her age, that's to be expected. Next is Dakota Johnson. Stylist Kate Young is known for gravitating towards more minimalistic looks, and that's definitely the direction Dakota's style goes in. None of her outfits are very inventive, but they fit well and look good. I just hope that now that she's in her breakup era, she might have a bit more fun. Next is Addison Rae, who is currently styled by Dara Allen. I've really enjoyed watching Addison's attempt to break out of the TikTok influencer bubble into pop stardom. Some people might say that she's trying too hard to become iconic, but I will always respect effort, even if it is forced. Next is Hunter Schafer, who is also styled by Dara Allen. Hunter switches between model off-duty and elven queen vibes, and I still wish that she'd been cast as Zelda. Although I think that she looks great in a pretty dress, I love when they lean into the weird because she can totally pull it off. Next is Ayo Edebiri. Considering how recent her rise to fame has been, I think Ayo's style philosophy is pretty well defined. So kudos to stylist Danielle Goldberg. She's a quirky girl, so I love when they have fun with her clothing and go in a dorky, boyish direction. But she also looks great in just a classic glam moment. Next is Jenna Ortega. Similar to Zendaya, she's been working with the same stylist since her Disney Channel days, Enrique Melendez. Her casual style is generically trendy, but where she really shines is her method dressing. And the press tour for Wednesday and Beetlejuice were just spectacular, and one of the only reasons I even realized that those projects were coming out. Next is Chappell Roan. Although she's been in the music business for a solid decade now, Chappell has only recently hit it big. Apart from her songs being incredibly catchy, I think that her look has a lot to do with her success. Courtesy of stylist Genesis Webb, Chappell's outfits go in an artistic direction that pay homage to different pop culture moments and references. She doesn't really have a street style since she's always in character, but it'll be interesting to see how that changes in the future. My last honorable mention is Sarah Sherman. This is going to be quite a controversial inclusion, but I really love how much Sarah has leaned into the sort of clowncore art teacher vibes. She is a comedian, so why wouldn't she have fun with her clothing? And sure, it's very of its time and just a little bit ugly, but as someone who loves kitschy knickknacks and stuff that looks like other stuff, it's right up my alley. So are there any celebrities that I missed? And should I make a worst dressed list in the future, or is that too mean? Anyway, that's it for this video, and I will see you next time. Bye!